So sadly, we are heading into our final day, but don't worry, we have in plan a very, very intense and rewarding day. So the morning we're going to start again with a series of presentations from 4 very inspiring researchers and practitioners discussing on the topic of democracy, participation and civic engagement in the youth sector, and social inclusion. And at the end of the input from our experts, we're gonna unfortunately have to say goodbye to Amerah and Bitfreaks, who will say goodbye in their usual way. And then we're going to break into the labs. So also today we'll have to come up with brilliant ideas on what is working, and if it's not working, why it's not working, and how we can try to find solutions to that. The afternoon is pretty much an open floor for debate and reflections and food for thought, and Magda was saying very nicely, messages to take home on the very intense work that we did throughout these days. And that will be pretty much our day today. So now that I see that more people are in, I'm going to start the day introducing our first presenter, Veronica Stefan, who is going to talk about developing practical solutions to inequalities and social exclusion.
Okay, good morning. I think I have the easy task for the morning. I'm going to bore you a little bit. And I also I have prepared the presentation. I didn't have it in mind, but then everyone has one, so okay, why not? Okay, I'm Veronica. I'm from Romania, and I have the easy task, but the very easy task, talking about practical solutions. Because what do you know? We have the limits, we have the barriers, now we need the solutions. And where should they come from? Well, from Romania, of course, the other corner of the world. But before that, what day is it today? Wow, happy Children's Day. I know it's a cheesy picture, but I cannot miss the time for today because all of us are children in our spirits at least. And they do say, well, one thing there. At least one thing we can learn from our children, and that would be fight tirelessly for something you believe in. And this is my motto, to be honest, because yesterday we were asked all day long, what are we? Youth workers, youth researchers, youth policymakers. To be honest, I'm none of that, but I'm someone who tirelessly is doing with passion the things she believes in. And yeah, children are the most valuable natural resource, so they say. Not so sure about the reality, because the numbers in my reality you have seen in the first day, and this is my reality, is that children under 18 years old are actually at risk of poverty. More than 0.5% of them. Sorry, 50% of them. In the same situation are the young people. So my reality is not so good. What I'd like to clarify first is that during the past 10 years, I've been working with youth organizations. And just to clarify, I love youth organizations and I believe in them because I believe in the power of young people and I believe in the power of representing young people. What I have understood, nevertheless, is that youth organizations are not all the time the stakeholders that are most representative when we are talking about all young people, and in particular, the vulnerable ones, and those at risk, and especially those you have seen in these slides, because young people in those categories most likely will never be organized. In Romania, for example, we have what? About 6 million young people. How many of them are organized? About 5%. How many was I representing until some years ago? I don't know, 1%. But what was I doing for them? I was speaking on behalf of them, at national level, at the European level. But then I understood I'm not the one person who should be talking about that. And that's why I chose to tackle an issue That's not my issue, because I'm not a youth worker. But who has heard about the needs? Haha. Let's go a little bit further, yeah? Just to clarify, not in employment, education, or training, whatever that may mean. Who is working with the young needs? Hands up. Who has been in a need situation ever, regardless the age? Yeah, we have been. Just to be honest, I work in the youth sector, so either you want it or not, the stability in youth organizations, it's highly, highly unlikely to find the permanent job. Why do we choose NEET? Why did we choose NEET? Because it's a wrong name, and I have learned that from the best person, and that would be Howard. And I've learned it, I don't know, 2007, 2008, I think it was one of my biggest European events, and he was talking. Young people in NEET situations, those young people that are so visible or not so much visible. And then I learned a lot of things, and then I learned about the youth work. And that's why I understood, while working in Romania, that actually these young people are the ones who will never be addressed by the policies we are talking about, that youth organizations will never reach them, but maybe they're the only ones who are at the table. But again, the practitioners, the real practitioners, which would be the youth workers, will never be at that table. And my issue is, and I've told you about that yesterday whenever I had the chance, is that we are not organized as a sector. But in particular, the youth workers are not organized. And that's what we try to do in Romania. Because now it's fancy to talk about the needs. The needs have been there long time before. But it's a fancy name now that has been agreed upon at the European level and at the global level as well. So that's why we said, what's our problem? Well, it's an invisible generation for us, and the numbers will show you. Because it's not just that they are not in employment, education, or training. Sometimes we don't even know where they are. And what was our solution? It was an NGO coalition. And trust me, it's not working perfectly, but it's working. And you know why? I think because the public institutions were surprised that we even know what needs mean. Because for them, it was only a name on a paper that came from the European Commission, and they say, okay, you have to do something about these young people. But then, how can you reach them? Oh, let's go to the trade unions. Let's go to employers' associations. Where do they find them? Nowhere, basically, because maybe, at best, youth organizations and youth workers, youth centers are dealing with them. And that's what we managed to do. And this is the work we have accomplished in about 6 months, actually 3 months more intensively, and we got 34 member organizations. But let me stress that part. The majority of them are not youth-led organizations. They are grassroots organizations from rural areas, from youth centers, daily centers, whatever you want to call them. And we did produce the first research on young needs in Romania. Later on, you'll learn that there is some sort of research on the topic at the European level. There is national research, and Howard can tell you a lot about that for, I don't know, decades that has been done in the UK and some other countries. But there are many other countries that are implementing policies for this category that they're not even knowing what are they talking about. So we produced a quality research. The point is to see who are these people, what is their daily life. We actually looked at their one-day budget time to see what's happening. Okay, we did manage to do something, and that was to be recognized as partners. As I told you, the ministries didn't know with whom to talk about this. So just because we used the fancy name, we got their attention. But now it's up to us, because the need solution or the need situation in Romania, it's not so pink. This is just to have an image. I mean, yesterday you were talking about employment and education a little bit, but this is in numbers how the situation looks. I mean, we chose 2007, 2014, mostly because 2007 was the year when Romania joined the EU, but it was also the year before the crisis. And if you look at the EU statistics, at least until the 24 years old, you see that the numbers are increasing, but not so much. While for Romania, the numbers are increasing. And they are increasing, and I wanted to stress the part with the 25, 29 years old, much more in that category. And there is another slide I like much more, and that would be the difference between boys and girls. Yesterday we were talking about gender issues. You remember that? Well, for the age group, 25, 29, girls are mostly double than boys. So the situation is not so pink after all. It was never meant to be pink, but it's actually tragic. That's the point we want to make. Concretely, what does it mean? About 500,000 of young people in this situation. And that's why we are an invisible generation, because we can only estimate who these people are. We don't know them. We have about 80,000, so it's like what, 1 in 5 people identified and registered. And well, we are not so much goal achievers, because until 2020 we aim to register and have beneficiaries about 160,000 young needs. Because, well, let's be modest and admit our limits, right? And find some sort of practical solutions. And most of them are supposed to be reached through the magic youth guarantee. Well, the needs, you should know, they are easy to put in one single category. And this is a proposal from the Eurofund. It's a study I strongly encourage you to read. And they are going to produce some more, I understand. These are some sort of 5 categories, let's say, where you can put the needs. Conventional unemployed, unavailable due to health issues, disabilities, disengaged, the young offenders, young people that maybe don't even look for a job, a training, or an education opportunity. But then you have an opportunity seeker and a volunteer need. I've been one, to be honest. I was looking for something better for me, but still a need, you see? So how can one measure can actually reach all of them? How different are they? And well, I'm not going to get in this part, just to keep in mind, the risk factors of getting in need situations are quite troubling. And please have a look at the immigration, because it's a hot topic, and it's a bit connected with the refugees as well. The young people in that situation are at risk with 70% more to get in need situations. And if education is usually an issue, lower achievers in education or dropouts, don't forget that already there are many countries where higher education graduates are already needs. So it's about 10% in countries like Austria, Denmark, Germany, but it's like 20% in countries like Italy. So the statistics are not looking very well for the higher educated either. But my issue is because today we're talking about participation. There must be some other connections between having in the end, a huge population of young people who do nothing, because that's the issue. It's not that they are just unemployed. They are nowhere. They are also not participating. I mean, Romania is having elections this week. We had elections 2 years ago at the European level. We keep saying young people are not participating, are not engaging. They represent little numbers. So that's why the policies don't address them. But then there is a circle going around. Because countries like Hungary and Bulgaria, for example, that have high need rates, you will see them in the cluster number 2, are also the ones who are least engaged. And then again, countries who have a low number of needs have the highest participation rate, like Sweden or Denmark. There must be some correlation, but I'm not going to say it is or not, but it's good to make. Costs, okay, you can see that, you can read further on. It's estimated because we are losing twice with the needs. We are losing when they are not producing, not contributing, and we are losing when we are just spending on the social welfare because it's not seen as an investment. The youth guarantee, never mind, it's for the European Union, but there is a key word there that was supposed to happen, a good quality offer. That's never happening. We just have measures of employment, education, training, blah, blah, blah. So nice, but where is the quality part? Because that's the part we are missing all the time. What are member states doing? I'm not going to that debate either. And Howard says it perfectly, and this is one thing I have heard from here. We hit the target, but we so miss the point. Because we like numbers, but one size doesn't fit all. One solution, it's not guaranteeing anything. It's not only about the labor market. We need integrated measures, and we need a strong investment in youth work. I call it youth work is still the Cinderella of youth, of economic and social inclusion. Because, why? Because we are doing it, but no one is seeing it. Maybe the data is proving it's actually working, but who is listening to us? We have to make sure we are doing that. So that's why we fight for coalitions. We need to fight for the recognition of youth workers as policymakers, as independent actors that have the same power as trade unions, as employers' associations, Trade unions are not so much loved by anyone. So why couldn't we do the same for the youth workers? They have the expertise, but they need to become stronger advocates. They need to invest in their advocacy skills as well. It's not enough to do only the grassroots. It's not. This is not going to ensure our sustainability, our resources. That's why we're not going to be follow on the thousands of research that is available there. That's why we're not going to be able to implement so many policies that come from the European level. And yes, once in a while, either you like it or not, need it's there on the table. Funding is coming for the needs. Use it. Use it for the things you need to do. And this charter I would like to leave you with. This is a very cool instrument if you want to. It's still not used enough. It's not practical enough, mostly because so many member states didn't choose to accept to use it, but we should know about it. Because what is it about is the social charter. It's a European social charter, and it's a very important tool we need to use. Use as many things as you want. Why do we need to strengthen the youth sector? It was in the Council of Europe debate in 2012, the discussion, and I want to highlight that last part. Europe risks not only producing a lost generation of disillusioned young people, but also undermining its political stability and social cohesion, justice and peace. And this was 2012, and I know Mohammed did sit in the room and he will talk a bit more important things later. But we are in a much worse situation 4 years later. And we are not a lost generation, but we are, as young people, sometimes an invisible generation. And it's the job sometimes of the youth workers to change it. That would be all from my side. Thank you, and good luck.
Veronica, thank you very much, not only for a very insightful presentation, but also for the passion that you transmitted, because indeed, passion is what, trust and love makes the world go round. I would like to invite now we have a team of presenters that will, introduce you to the link between young people's social situation and their European citizenship identity. So please welcome Alexandra Severino and Sergio Marques. And just before they are speaking, don't worry, we're going to have a bit of time for debating when we finish all three presentations. So nothing changed from yesterday.
So good morning, everyone. Thank you for having you here. And it's so very appropriate to speak after Veronica because our research is, as announced, about measuring the impact that social inequalities have on the perceptions of the European citizenship by young people. So our objective is to check these relations between equality or inequality and the citizenship among the specific group of young people who are about to vote. And we conducted surveys in Portugal, our country, and Germany with 16 to 18 years old young people in 2 schools per country, one from a high social background, and you will see on the graphics HSB, and from the low social background, LSB, while reflecting on the legal dimension of the European citizenship and Europe's policies for youth. This is still a working paper, so I must alert you that we have only preliminary results, and we do want to expand this research. We still have to equal the samples from the schools. We're presenting today actually a picture of this first moment of our research, and we have more data connections to explore and maybe get some feedback from you. We want to have time for that and by the end of the presentation. So feel free to contribute to tell us your experience from your countries. So, having said that, I want to talk about the legal framework of the EU for a start. Do you know how many times the term equal or equality as legal concepts are mentioned in the EU treaties? Anyone has a clue? Twice? No, over 100. Over 100. But do you know how many times out of this over 100 are about equality and youth together?
One.
Yes, I mentioned that somewhere in the lab. Yeah, one. That's Article 21 of the Charter of Fundamental Rights, and it reads that any discrimination based on several criteria, but age is one of them, so any discrimination based on age shall be prohibited. As the only rule where there is a cross-reference between youth and equality, that makes this article very, very powerful for us, not only as citizens, but as policymakers, as researchers, as all the things that we care about in the magic triangle, whether it works or not. But this is our most powerful reference to work with. But having this right of Article 21, it doesn't mean that we have the right policies, though. Over the last years, we all know that youth policy efforts were concentrated in economic aspects and initiatives. It does make sense if we think about the context of huge unemployment. But what we want to ask, what interests us, is to know if that's all there is for the youth. And to answer that, I ask you to take a look at Article 20 of the Treaty of the Functioning of the EU, which presents mainly these three dimensions, which are the right to move and reside freely, the right to vote and to stand as candidates in local elections and as in the Parliament, in the European Parliament elections, and more importantly, in terms of the tensions that it creates, that every person holding the nationality of a member state shall be citizen of the Union. So, as we can see, this structure of the European citizenship is linked with the economic aspect of our policies, but it's certainly not only about this. And what the data we gathered, and Alexandra will expose right now, is it intends to show, or it intends to explain us that if we keep exploring only with exclusivity the economic aspects of integration of citizenship, maybe that has more surprising impact and results than we would think at first. At least when we were doing the research, we were highly surprised by this. And let's see how you feel about this, what do you think, and change some thoughts on that. So I will leave you with Alex to explore this data.
Hello everybody, so happy to be here and presenting this small research. Okay, maybe too high? Fine like that? Okay. We consider despite the sample is small, it raises many interesting questions to reflect on. That's why we chose to share, despite not having all the data and all the links analyzed by now. So one of the questions we posed was whether the students thought of themselves as European citizens. Who thinks that the vast majority said yes, or the vast majority said no in both countries? Yes. Who thinks that the vast majority in both countries said yes, that they think of themselves as European citizens? And as no? Okay, yeah, that was our surprise. The vast majority think of themselves as European citizens, and if you notice, there are similarities within the social-economic backgrounds, despite all of them are very similar. However, it doesn't necessarily mean that they interest themselves in European politics, because to the question whether they followed the last European elections, a big part of them said no, and the ones we said yes, when asked to mention at least one agent involved, whether an institution, a candidate could not mention one. We also asked if they, I'm sorry, I guess I passed, yes. We also asked if they intended to vote in the next national or European elections, being the options yes or no, yes, no, or maybe, and those were the results we had. Once again, the similarities are very similar for the same social economic background. Okay, I move a lot, I'm sorry. So the similarities again are linked with the social economic background rather than the country. Even though, you see, many of them intend to vote, but then we were discussing in the previous symposium that young people do not feel represented or identified with the representative systems and representative democracy. This shows probably that intention not always is the way they will act, and that's why we chose this age gap, from 16 to 18, so they were close to the legal voting age. Then we also asked if they considered that the EU and the Council of Europe, through their institutional mandates, had an impact on their lives or in the lives of people close to them. And again, the similarities are linked with social economic background rather than a country. And of course, the students from a high social background said, most of them said yes, and just a small part said no, and there's some maybes, and of course, low social background, it's the opposite. Then, and there's many links, again, I have to stress this to assess, because we asked what kind, if you would answer that the impact was positive, we asked them to classify. Extremely positive, just positive. And we believe that depending on the economic, social economic background, the answers will be different in regard to that classification and everything. We also asked that if they felt that Europe and the Council of Europe, the partnerships and everything, promote equal access to opportunities. I don't have a graph, but I have the numbers. And in Portugal, the high social background students, 94% said yes. For the low social background ones, the percentage was very small. And in Germany, it was 49% that said yes, that Europe promotes equal access to opportunity in the high social background, and around 17 for low social background. So here the differences are also linked country, both country and social economic background. Sorry. Then our last question, we had 26 questions, was whether they feel that the coming of refugees to the EU would threaten their access to equal opportunities. And this is the graph where the results are, the similarities are within the country origin and not the social economic background. And we were discussing that in one of the labs yesterday. Especially I was discussing this aspect with Mohammed, that will speak after us. And I believe that has to do with the fact that in Portugal we don't have any contact with the refugee situation. We welcomed a couple of refugees. We don't know what it means, how it feels, none of that. And in Germany, of course, it was the country that we all know welcomed more refugees. And happily they say that no, the vast majority in both economic backgrounds said no, we don't feel that they threaten our access to opportunities. Notice that in Portugal, it's the high social background students that say that there are more, the percentage of yes, it's more elevated on the high social background students, which I found very surprising and upsetting in a way. So our key conclusions, and I'll leave you with that, is that the similarity of all our patterns are more linked with the social economic background, and the pattern is totally opposite for the question on refugees. that's what I want to say, and we would like to explore more links from which we have the data but not graphs, so any questions feel free to ask. We'd like to discuss that with you. And that is our message. We are very pro-Europe, as you might have noticed. But then on a side note, this is a Swiss bear, and I was like, well, maybe not the best picture to use for this message, but okay, it's fine. Anyway, I hope we all enjoy the rest of the symposium. Thank you. Sorry, I moved so much.
No, it's good. It's just for the live streaming that we needed to speak into the microphone.
Yeah, sure.
But, thank you very much to both of you for a very informative and bringing down Euroscepticism. I'm going to invite now our next speaker, who is going to arrange something technically there. Our next speaker is Mohammed Alsaud, and he will have a presentation on integration of migrants in community life. Very soon coming on the screen. Okay, in the meantime, if anybody has a question to the previous 3 presenters, you can ask it now, and then once the technical things are solved, we can continue. Any questions? Okay. Hanyo, please.
Presentation from Portugal and Germany. I was surprised about the figures that you got for the refugee issue in Germany, that people are not concerned about that, whether not in the low level, also in the high level. In which region were these 2 schools that you had as a sample? Because probably that impacts also the result.
German, but the school from high social background asked us to not be mentioned.
Ah, okay. No, only the region?
The reach, yeah, the reach from Berlin. The other is from Berlin, and it's called maybe. Yeah. Yeah, the city was Berlin, and in Portugal they were from Portugal. In Berlin, they were both from Berlin, but the high social background school accepted to participate because it considered it value, but they told us due to internal reasons we will not be mentioned.
That's okay. I just want to know because I would think that where you find quite a high number of refugees, that result is anyhow explainable because they have experiences that it doesn't bother them so much. But if you would ask the same question in Eastern Germany, I would expect that you get a different picture.
Yeah. Actually, we initially thought it would be very interesting to cover also an Eastern country and Finland, for instance. But there are school requirements regarding time for these things, and even this was a struggle. So we really hope, and that's something I forgot to mention, if there are colleagues from other countries who would like to use our model to conduct the same research and partner up with us, I think it would be, richer and more interesting. Even though it was surprisingly to me such different countries, and then the common ground on high social economic backgrounds in terms of views, especially on Europe. And I think that's the point of our symposium. So you have more access. It's already there, and it's really unfair. And I have another thing to add, and I'll finish, is that the school in Portugal which conducted the survey, they said they would accept it because they have this course on citizenship, all these things, where they travel to the European Parliament and everything. And they told me, if you want to develop a workshop, we would be so interested. When I approached the low social background school, they told me, oh, you have to go through channels. It will be really complicated. I'm not sure these kids are really interested in assessing European opportunities. I think you will be losing your time. So it starts already there. Even when you try to leave the hat of researcher and go into the field and work with those kids, it's a lot harder for low social economic ones. Thank you for your question.
Okay, thank you. Now, we're not going to take a short comment. We're going to go quickly to Mohammed and give him the floor. And after Mohammed's presentation, we are opening the floor for comment and other input and other questions. So, Mohammed, the floor is yours.
One second. There's no voice. There's no voice. No. I need the sound. Okay. Okay. Where is this?
Are we morons? We need to kill them. 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 The violent jihadists, the FBI, the CIA. Let them kill us. We need to kill them. 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 Bomb them, and bomb them again. Terrorism. Us, them, us. Arm those Muslims to the teeth. Arm those Muslims to the teeth. Arm those Muslims to the teeth. They don't operate the way we do. They're either with us or they're against us. We need to kill them. 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 Bomb them, and bomb them again. They call us Islamophobes. Hundreds of thousands of innocents killed in the Middle East. Allah Akbar. Now, I've been telling you for a year that they're coming for us, that there is a reverse crusade in progress. The Christian genocide. We need to kill them. 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 Bomb them, and bomb them again. Terrorism. Our own destruction. We need to kill them. 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 Bomb them, and bomb them again. Terrorism will be the death of us.
Good morning. Good reality check. My name is Mohammed Alsaud. I'm from Syria. I live as a political refugee in Sweden. I'm a human rights activist and democracy activist for the last 8 years. I'm a filmmaker, and I am the co-founder and chairman of the Young Republic organization that will I represent in a few minutes. Before I start my speech, I think my input will be as a young refugee, as an activist, and as an organization that works with civic engagement of young refugees in their host communities. Before I start to talk about our own work, I need to mention some challenges that we are facing in the field of participation and belonging to the community that is, I think, related to the name of the symposium. The first challenge, I think, is absent voices. I am hearing a lot in the past few months from lots of my friends and lots of people who are involved in this domain that who are the refugees? Where are the refugees? Why we cannot hear them? Why we cannot know them? Why we cannot see what do they want and think about? And I think the answer is really simple, because whenever I go to events about the refugees, the people on the panel are not refugees. And the people in the audience are not refugees. So, and refugees does not have the power to be heard, even if they want to. The set and the current power model does not allow refugees to be heard and to be represented. So if you want to hear more about refugees, give them the space to present themselves. Don't bring someone who is not a refugee and who has never been out of his safe zone to speak about refugees and their challenges. I think this is just common sense. The second challenge is the issue of trust and funding. I know a lot of great ideas and amazing initiatives that has been launched all over Europe from refugees and from former refugees. Unfortunately, most of them disappeared because the current funding model does not trust these people. The current funding model in most of the European countries and most of the European instruments, most of, not all of them, they only fund existing, well-established, well-known European organizations that are working with refugees, again. So it's not like this, the main stakeholder, it's someone we know and we have a relationship with. We give them most of the money to work with refugees who will, by the way, in most of the cases, work in the same way that they always do, while we have this unique situation that needs new ideas and new thinking. And I think the best people who knows about the refugees are refugees. Again, I think it's common sense. The third challenge that we face a lot is, even if some organizations are inviting refugees to be represented, it's only inviting them to be a decoration. It's a flower in the vase on the table, you know? So we are a group, for example, of German or Swedish people, and we have one person who is from an African origin and one refugee. It's the perfect picture for publications and for funding. Another challenge is talking about refugees as it is, you know, one homogeneous group that bringing together someone from Uzbekistan and someone from Ethiopia and say like, hey, these are one group that we need to deal with them in the same way. And in my opinion, this is a very big mistake because you cannot have a group of more than 50 or 60 different nationalities in one simple label that are refugees and design programs and talk about them and about their needs, etc., as like they are one person or like they are as a homogeneous group. The next challenge is the polarization and the double standard that are used by the media and police. And this is why I showed this horrific video at the beginning. This video, it's from Judge Jeanine in the US. I know it's not from Europe. And it was shown on Fox News as like the original interview. And there's this Syrian film collective that they pick parts of the speech and they re-edited as a reality check to see how the media is polarizing us between us and them. And them, they need to be killed no matter what. And it's actually increasing the domain of killing, not only to include terrorists, but to include anyone who is different. And I can totally relate to this because, for example, I live in Sweden. And in Sweden, we have a lot of racist attacks against people who have darker skin. For example, 4 months ago, there is this group that is called the Swedish Resistance Movement. They define themselves as a racist movement on their publications. They attacked the central station in Stockholm, and they were beating up every child and adolescent that has darker skin. All the reports literally all the reports in the media and in the police were describing them as football hooligans. They define themselves as racist group, and they are proud of it. The media and police would say, football hooligans. After that, there was this guy who was 20 years old, and he attacked a school in one of the cities, I think it was Örebro in Sweden, and he attacked the school with a sword, and he was wearing the Nazi helmet, you know, with the extra thing on the side. And he killed 2 students and 1 teacher. All of them, they are not ethnically Swedes. And then he was shot after that by the police. All the media coverage was focusing on how poor this kid was because he had 6 friends on Facebook. I'm not joking. This was the coverage. So this kind of coverage and this kind of double standards is creating a lot of the feeling of inequality and injustice, because whenever a crime or anything wrong committed by, let's say, a refugee or a migrant, it's like there's a whole narrative that is already constructed that are put in place. And there are like ready conclusions that, you know, in 2 minutes, all the media and all the police and all like the public opinion is talking about. On the other hand, whenever anything happens on the other side from a racist group, it is either football fans or mentally troubled or lonely children. And I believe, and I saw it by my own eyes, this is one of the biggest challenges for people to feel that they belong and to feel that they live in an equal and just society when they are treated as second or third or maybe 4th degree humans. There's also this challenge of alienation for people who are different, especially refugees. And sometimes it's funny because of all the things that I have mentioned before, there's this feeling of these people are aliens. So, for example, when I meet people and I mention that I sing in choir, they were like, oh my God, you sing. And like, of course I sing, of course I listen to music, and of course I see films. I'm not less human than you, and you are not less alien than me. I mean, a refugee is a label. It's not like I'm coming from a different race or something. I need to move fast because they are showing the... So I will jump some points, and I will go to the last challenge, which is the intentions and motives. Lots of people who are working in the field of integration and inclusion, they are doing this because many of them, not all of them, again, they are doing this because there are lots of funds there for this work. It's sexy. Everyone is doing it. And some people, they believe that refugees are the most amazing human beings in the world, which is not true. It's just another human group that includes good people and bad people. Which leads to my second point, which is we work with inclusion as a human rights-based process. We don't work with inclusion and we don't advocate for equality because there are funds there. Our work is on voluntary basis, and we don't do it because it's sexy. We do it because it's the rights of these people to be included. Very fast, our inclusion process is based on 5 pillars. The first one is equal access to goods and services. The second thing is the right to participate in the decision-making processes that are affecting the lives of these people. The third thing is the right to contribute to the cultural production that is creating the identity of the community that they are living in. The fourth pillar is in all forms of discrimination against them. And the fifth one, and the last one, is the rule of law. If you are working with refugees and if you love refugees, it doesn't mean that if one of them commits something against the law, there shouldn't be the rule of law in this case. It is the rule of law, it's not the rule of the racist movements to go there and beat up these people who committed something wrong. Very fast, what is the Young Republic organization? It's a Syrian diaspora youth organization. We work to empower young Syrians to foster their civic engagement and democratic participation in their host communities. This is like 90% of our aim. The 10%, we hope by this process that we are building future leaders for democratic transition in Syria. When we have these people democratically participate in their host communities and they are engaged, they build this experience and knowledge and attitude positively towards democracy. Hopefully someday when there is a democratic transition, these people, these young people will be advocates for democracy in Syria. I will jump. Okay, my last point. How much time? It's done. Okay. My last point, I will present one of our programs that we have launched recently. It's called Gamify. And we work with this program to actually hit different targets at the same time. Gamify is an experimental learning journey. It brings people from different backgrounds in the same room to play a game that we have already designed to explain a human rights related issue. So when we teach about human rights, we don't put a slide and we say human rights is this and this and this and it's based on this and this and this. We play actually different simulation games that we can explain these concepts like discrimination and freedoms and democracy, etc. in a game set. So this program allow young people to explore different democratic practices and possibilities to actively participate and engage in like creative forms. It also bridge the gaps between different people that wouldn't have the chance to meet without being part of Gamify. We organize it in different geographic places, for example, in the suburbs and in the city center. And the people who live in the city center would go to the suburbs. Some of them, it's the first time to go to the suburb. And they would meet people, they would see the place, and they would reflect together and vice versa. So, yeah, I think I'm on time. Thank you very much. And I'm sorry for my voice. I have an allergy from the spring, so excuse me.
It's fine. Thank you, Mohammed. And yes, it was a very shocking clip. I wonder if you know about the No Hate Speech campaign, the No Hate Speech online campaign, because I think some of the energy that you are putting into what you are doing and the campaign message and the campaign tools are going hand in hand and making sure that somehow the message arrives into the mainstream media. We are opening the floor for some questions. So if you have questions for our practitioners and for our researchers today, please do not be shy. And we're going to be passing with microphones around. Please do not be shy. I know it was a shocking movie. It's still in my head. Kill them, kill them. I'm like, get out, get out.
I have a question to Mohammed. In how far are you anyhow internationally connected with your Swedish initiative? Are there links to other organizations working, for instance, in Germany or in other countries where Syrian refugees are living?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
My question was how far you are connected to other initiatives of refugees, Syrian refugees in this case, in other countries? Is there an international structure or communication at least or something?
Actually, we are connected in informal way. There is no like formal body that is working as like the representative of the Syrian diaspora. But because most of us are activists, so we know each other, and sometimes we exchange ideas and we exchange feedback. But so far, there is no like umbrella for the Syrian diaspora.
Thank you.
Yes. I have a question for Mohammed as well. My question is, do you maybe know how disabled refugees are taken care of in Sweden, and if you have any, if there is any program for disabled refugees?
Thanks for the question. I think the situation of the disabled refugees are maybe better in Sweden than other places. Still, they are one of the most vulnerable groups in this conflict. And we personally, as an organization, we don't work till now, unfortunately, with people with special needs or disabilities. But I hope in the future, when we are more well established, that we can start a program only for this group.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I was wondering if the people who arrive to Europe have more money than the people who stay, or is all kind of social classes which arrive, if it's easier to arrive if you have more money, or I don't know.
I don't think there's a research about that, so my answer will be a personal observation. I don't think there is a class factor in coming to Europe. I know people who worked for 1 whole year in Turkey in a very hard condition to have this amount of money to afford the smuggling boats to come to Europe. And I know people who were businessmen in Syria, and they are really rich, and they didn't think of coming to Europe because it's better for them to open businesses in Sudan or Algeria or Dubai. So we cannot say that, for example, people who have a lot of money, they come here. There are lots of people who have lots of money, they came here, and at the same time, we have lots of people who don't have lots of money, and they came here. So I don't think there is a link between the class and the coming to Europe.
First of all, thank you for the story you told us. Imagine tomorrow you are Director General of Democracy in the Council of Europe, or you are Commissioner responsible for youth, education, culture and sport in the European Union. What will be the first thing when you are in power, what you will do in your first day?
I will resign. I think the first thing I will do is I will try to spend a good amount of time listening to, for example, people from a special background like refugees and migrants, and try to design our response as the Commission or the Council according to their needs. I would never think of something and impose it with them. And I think it's part of the Council's approach that we work with youth, not on youth. And I think it's the same approach is valid with young refugees. So it's a sudden question. But I think on the first idea that comes to my head, this is the first thing I would do. I would go and I would listen to lots of people from lots of different backgrounds from the refugee young people.
Thank you. I also would like to remind you that we had two wonderful presentations also before Mohammed, and I would like, if possible, to also have some question to Veronica, Alexandra, and Sergio. Sean, sorry, I haven't seen you.
Hi, I'd like to ask our Portuguese researchers, and it's not a monarchy question, I'm afraid. In your research, would you consider going back to actually interview the teachers in the school about their ideas of being European citizens or not?
Thank you, Stuart, despite you disappointing me a bit by not mentioning monarchy. Well, I consider it. There was some opposition from the school, but in the high social background school in Portugal, I was allowed to conduct the surveys. So some of the teachers spoke to me and said, these kids do not care about anything. So we teach this course on citizenship. We try to involve them, but they really don't care. And I think those are the views they had. They wish they would, especially regarding initiatives like the trips to the European Parliament, more engagement. But they say only the ones that are already interested, are the target public they reach. So even in a high social background school, it's difficult to engage them. As for the lower social background one, I was told it was best that the teachers would conduct the surveys themselves, otherwise they would write things on the surveys and not answer the questions if it was me, because I seem really young and they would not see me as a...
If I may just add something, I think that on grounds of methodology, Stuart, this survey with teachers would justify a new research with administratives, practitioners, and et cetera, and then we could compare the data from the students and from the staff, let's call them like this, and there we could see what obstacles were created or facilitations that were made.
Yeah, I just. Does it work? Does anybody? Yeah. Well, I just wanted to say that what you have shown previously is also a topic we have already seen throughout the labs and even here in the plenary, and that's that we do not really have the outreach to where we would like to have it, and this is precisely where it shows. The low-end schools. They are not really interested because they have never been in touch with any of that. They don't see any upsides because they have no idea what's going on. Whereas the high-end schools, they really get in touch with the program. They know what's going on. They can see the upsides. And moreover, when you look into the research, it's shown and it's proven that actually the low-end children and the low-end students, the low-end youth, actually benefit more from these activities than the high-end ones. So if we actually were able to reach out to them, to engage them, that would actually have a large impact on them. So just a comment.
I just have a comment too. It's total. I believe what you say is right. Let's just, again, it's a very small survey. It probably does not prove it bluntly, but I'm sure it gives some insights. And it's true, and what I find most upsetting is that someone decides for them when they ask that they are not interested in those. Like I asked and they said those kids won't be interested in learning about mobility programs or these things. So that upsets me as a researcher and a youth worker, definitely. And the other thing is, when asked whether they knew any agent in the European elections, for the low social background schools, the one that mentioned Angela Merkel or François Hollande, and not Portuguese politicians or institutions, which definitely shows that their view of Europe is something that they fit in, and probably they don't understand how, but they still see it as something for the others or more richer countries or more engaged in a way. And that's really upsetting, because on the high social background one in Portugal, when they mentioned the few that mentioned that they knew, they mentioned Portuguese politicians usually linked to a specific political option. So yeah, thank you for your comment.
Also, just a small thing to add is that one of the things that concerned us a lot was that the impact on the high social background students, from the data we have so far, that it's indicated that they feel more the impact of the policies than the low social background students, in a way that they feel threatened by it and not actually by approving it, while the low social background students don't even know about it. So this contradiction, this bizarre data, it's actually very, very concerning. It was very concerning for us as well.
I would like to thank you all, and I hope that many of the reflections that are still sparkled by the presentation today in the morning are to be carried into the labs. I also would like to remind you that all the analytical papers, or the research paper that Sergio and Alexandra have done is on the partnership webpage, as well as the presentations that we saw today. And before going into the coffee break, I would like to give the floor to Amerah, who is going to, again, charm us and enchant us with a concluding poem.
So yeah, we're leaving in a bit to head back to Birmingham. Apparently it's raining there. I have been listening kind of throughout the few days, and put your hand up if you travelled here by plane. Okay, put your hands down. Put your hands up if you didn't. Okay, I'm going to assume you guys did, just for the sake of this poem. Is that okay? Okay. So, kind of taking the majority, travelling by plane, I went for a concept of being at an airport. So everything that I've learned and heard, there's a few facts, there's a few things that I took from the labs as well. So it goes like this. You are sat in an airport about to fly out of a city you've called home for some time. Your flight number 2020 has no agenda next to it. You watch the wheels of aeroplanes turning but not moving. You stare at 21-year-old Mina turning the engine on and off, on and off, on and off in full pilot gear. You hear an announcement. They say £1,500 goes to the first 40 people on the plane and the rest get £9 each. Your body disapproves. You open a roadmap. Question why you don't feel represented in the paper in front of you, you close it, you sigh. While staring at Mina, you question if she is 70% more likely to be paid more than you, even if you did the exact same training. You remember you didn't go to university. You read a sign saying young people's voices need to be understood by those in power, of course, with a picture of a cis white male in a suit saying diversity is great, you cringe. Gate CROATIA is open. The lady checking your passport tells you because you are 23 years old, you are 30% more likely to be at risk of poverty. She smiles, enjoy your stay. Her boss walks towards her and hesitates to smile. Her body moves so there is a little more distance between them. She writes on a note, I am one of the 75%. I try to connect the dots. Females in senior management, the note at the bottom of the receipt when buying coffee earlier said, stop women in management being sexually harassed, I connect more. Her name tag says floor manager. She moves slightly away from her colleagues, I connect the dots. I get on the plane and order 22.7 of hope for unemployed females under 25. Whilst in the sky, I decide to make a few promises to myself. I will never call young people disadvantaged. I will never talk about young people like they are only in the future and not amongst us now. I will make art inextricable to change. I will remind myself a refugee crisis is only a reflection of our politics. The plane is now landing. The pilot welcomes everyone. This is a glimpse of the future, behind Flight 2020. You notice everyone leaving the plane is different. There is so much more color. The air feels right. The atmosphere is hopeful. Flight 2020 is the future. When you get into the airport to take your luggage, you see 5 million young people in employment, from security guards to helpers, cleaners, pilots, air hostesses. The airport signs are translated into all languages because everyone's understood. Your passport isn't considered a sign of higher power. There is no information hidden behind closed doors. Everything is in a pocket guide you can pick up just before you leave. No voices are absent here. Everyone is welcome to sit on the panel. At the exit, there is a toolbox with adjusted messages for what is relevant to your destination. It's not a one-size-fits-all, but let's change the size according to the people. We can fly to the moon from right here. All schools have creatives and professionals supporting kids because we care about more than just ourselves. Action gets taken quicker than any race. Everyone wants to do something here. This is a destination of less talking and more doing. Thank you.